Hello, and welcome to the Resilient Leader's Journey, a podcast where we navigate challenging currents of growth and change. My name is Trent Theroux. Welcome back. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe. Tell somebody about it so that way we can grow our network. You can find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, or audio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. My guest today, he's sitting right there, is Topher Hamblett. Topher is the executive director of Save the Bay, whose mission is to protect and improve Narragansett Bay. His work at Save the Bay has spanned over 30 years as a volunteer, intern, and advocate. And as executive director, Topher works with Save the Bay's board of directors to set strategic priorities, implement campaign, and raise support. He is a graduate of Connecticut College. Go Camels. Topher Hamblett, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Trent. I'm doing well, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. The most pressing question that I have on my mind is, how many times have you won the Save the Bay swim from Newport, Rhode Island to Jamestown?
I've won it every year just by participating, Trent. It's a joy.
Maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about what Save the Bay is and then clue them in what I'm talking about this swimming event.
Sure. Save the Bay has been around 55 years, and our mission is to protect and improve Narragansett Bay. And we're driven by a strong volunteer force and a passion for Narragansett Bay. We're also inspired by a vision of a bay that's fully fishable and swimmable and accessible to everyone. The Bay Swim is a once-a-year event held every summer where 300 plus swimmers dive into the water at Naval Station Newport and swim across the East Passage right north of the Newport Bridge over to Jamestown. It's our most important fundraiser, and it's a great community event.
It's a huge community event, and I, as people in this audience know, I'm an avid swimmer, and I've done that event many times, and it is a thrill to be swimming almost under the Newport Bridge. What a unique venue. You close off traffic, is that right? Boat traffic, so people have a...
That's correct. We work with the U.S. Coast Guard on all things safety, and that includes closing off the East Passage for 2 hours so the swim can take place. And this year, I'm excited to share with you that this is our 50th swim.
Whoa!
So we're jazzed about it.
I better get training so I can perform well in it this year.
Yeah.
So, you're working predominantly in environmental issues. Is that a difficult climate to work in either in Rhode Island or nationally?
These days especially, it's challenging. I will say that in Rhode Island, thanks to Save the Bay and many other of our peer organizations, we have really done a nice job of mobilizing the public's love for the environment, love for the bay, love for the coast into action. So I think it's challenging on one level in that we have to sort of endure the ups and downs and unpredictability of what happens in government. So elections do indeed have consequences. So these days we're dealing with a lot of cuts to federal agencies that fund important programs that help Narragansett Bay, like habitat restoration.
What percentage of your funding comes from donors versus federal funding and the like?
Well, the vast majority comes from donors, and that's individual donors, foundations, family foundations, and such. We do apply for and receive government grants to actually do on-the-ground projects like restoring salt marshes or doing environmental education programs in schools throughout the Narragansett Bay region. But the vast majority is contributions. We do not and cannot rely on government too much for what we do.
Most of us try not to, right?
Right.
So when you're rebuilding marshes, you're using your teams and you're using volunteers as well. How do those projects get identified and how are they led?
It's a great question. We have a team of people, we call them their habitat restoration team, and they know their stuff. They know the ecology of salt marshes. Salt marshes are the nurseries of life in Narragansett Bay, and that's where young fish, shellfish, birds all spend their early days for nourishment and also for safety from predators. They're very, very important to the health of the bay. And unfortunately, we've lost a lot of them from development, from filling, from roads and bridges that have cut through them and buried some of them. So our team is great at identifying salt marshes that can actually be restored through engineering and replanting. And we do everything from identify opportunities and all around Narragansett Bay to working with cities and towns to scope out projects and actually help secure the funding we need for those projects to happen. So we are very partner oriented in how we go about that.
It must be challenging to walk into the State House and talk about some of the environmental needs that you have to try to build a coalition there. What type of leadership in your mind is required to build a coalition of elected officials?
You know what it takes many things, Trent, and I would say that being an active listener and understanding from every legislator what their priorities are and trying to find that common ground between Narragansett Bay and their district and their constituents. But one thing that's hard to sort of appreciate until you're in it at the State House is legislators are doing this part-time. They have constituents coming to them, coming at them sometimes with very, very compelling needs. And they also don't have much in the way of staff to support them. So you're kind of in a way competing with other pressing priorities and issues. It's a challenge of cutting through all that and getting their undivided attention. It can be done, but it takes years and years of work and of cultivating relationships at the State House.
What we're talking about is influence, and how do we apply influence on people who are used to influencing other people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a skill set involved with trying to influence people. And you talked about active listening is one of them. What else do you have to do to present yourself, your mission to representatives to have them side with you and want your legislation to move forward?
One of the most important things that we do and must do is connect their constituents to them. So they generally know what Save the Bay thinks about a given issue. But when they hear directly from the people they represent, I think it elevates their awareness and really increases the likelihood that they will take action on behalf of Narragansett Bay. And I do believe that common ground is important. And the other thing that we have to be aware of is that Narragansett Bay is a beautiful place, yes. It's also a place that many people depend on for their livelihood. So a salt marsh restoration project has tremendous ecological value, but by the way these projects work, we are working with engineers, environmental engineers, and planners and designers and construction companies, literally with backhoes in certain places. And those are jobs generally for Rhode Islanders and Rhode Island companies. So there are all kinds of ways to kind of find that common ground or broaden everyone's understanding of just how important the Bay is to life in Rhode Island.
So in many ways, you're trying to be an influencer. Do you have certain products that, well, that's a bad way of saying that. I'll scratch that out. Do you have influencers that are trying to amass thousands of viewers and hits and the like to try to bring some critical mass to an idea? That's what you're trying to do as part of your messaging?
Yes, and here's an example of that, Trent. We have, as you know, a fairly new aquarium in Newport, the Hamilton Family Aquarium, and it's a spectacular site. It connects people with the Bay, but one of the things we've been doing is working with influencers and inviting them to the aquarium, and they, of course, turn around and share their experience with the many people who follow them.
Is Taylor Swift one of your influencers?
She is not. That would be nice.
Oh, we're going to make a phone call to Taylor to see if we can get her on board. She lives right off the bay down in Westerly and Watch Hill there. She should have a meaningful influence here.
Mm-hmm. And the folks that we've been connecting with are, moms who have thousands of followers and go around to different places with their kids and have the experience. So, for example, one might come to Newport for the day, and part of their Newport experience is not only going to the aquarium, but going out on one of our seal watch tours out of Newport Harbor. And that is that's gold in terms of just spreading the awareness that we are here and about all the things we have to offer.
It's exciting. I was asking that question, not expecting that you have momfluencers that are helping drive a message to another generation of folks. My experience with the Bay and I think I know I've shared this with you, but I'm a regular swimmer. I've been in the bay swimming my whole life. I remember growing up that there were pictures of the bay with different colors as to when shellfish would be available or areas that were entirely off limits. And that map doesn't exist the same way anymore, does it?
No, it doesn't. Narragansett Bay over the last 50 years or so has really been transformed, and especially the upper part of the bay, meaning north of Prudence Island up into the Providence River. I grew up on the bay myself. When I was a kid in the 70s, swimming at Barrington Beach was forbidden much of the time because the water was too contaminated. The Providence River used to be choked with raw sewage. Everything that was flushed down a toilet went straight into the river and washed up on the shores of the upper bay. It was unsafe to have contact with. And through a series of events, including a lawsuit, but more importantly, the mobilizing of people to make public investments in clean water infrastructure, the upper bay and the Providence River have been transformed. So much so that we see much more shellfishing beds open more of the time, right up into the Providence River now. And I think the real exciting thing to me is that the city of East Providence now is looking at opening up 2 swimming beaches on the shores of the Providence River in the next few years. That says a lot. And, Rhode Island, as you know, Rhode Islanders get down on themselves or get down on the state sometimes. This is a great success story that we should all be proud of.
Topher, I know this story firsthand. I live on Crescent Beach. So
there you go.
And that's one of them. And every day when my wife and I will go for a walk, I'm bringing a bag to take out whatever little run-up trash that comes. But we're excited to see that open. For me, in the last 10 years, there is a tangible difference in the taste of the water. When I'm swimming and it gets in your mouth, there is a saltier, it's fresher. It's what salt water is supposed to be like over the last 10 years. It's a remarkable change in the environment thanks to the work that you and your folks have been doing.
Yeah, we think of ourselves as the people's voice for Narragansett Bay. I had one of my bosses when I started at Save the Bay said to me one time, fish don't vote. We need to do some work for them. But it's a credit to Rhode Islanders that they have time and time again, when they go to the polls and have a chance to invest in these cleanup projects, they do it and they do it in large numbers. It's not uncommon to see 70% approval on a green bond at the polls in November. And I think that's baked into Rhode Islanders' DNA that we need to take care of this place.
It's certainly an evolution over the last 50 years or so. How do you hold yourself accountable as a leader to your constituents, to the people that work for you?
Accountability goes in many directions. So I'm accountable to our board of directors, and there is regular reporting and those kinds of things. And with the staff, I think the best thing I can do is create a work environment where we are all rowing in the same direction. Everyone's working in the best interest of the organization. So part of being accountable is being open to answering any questions anytime from anyone and answering them honestly. I think integrity is really important to all of this. We are a science-based advocacy organization with that also has a great marine science education program and a restoration program and a volunteer force of anywhere between 3,000 and 4,000 people, depending on the year. So folks need to know what's going on and why. And I do think that being honest and having integrity is essential. And without that, we wouldn't be anywhere. I mean, we've built up a very, I think, strong reputation as a trusted advocate. So that means that we have to have accountability from within and transparency in the way we make our decisions.
Topher, I am surprised, genuinely surprised, that there are times that there are opponents to your advocacy, that political interest or personal interest or financial interest would occasionally oppose some of the work that you're doing. How do you come to the table with those stakeholders to try to find either compromise or a path through?
I think generally, Trent, as an approach, it's important that we understand and respect everyone's point of view. There are issues where we get strongly criticized for doing too much or not doing enough at the same time. It's very challenging. You do have to meet with people and meet them where they are and hear them out. Kind of what I was saying earlier, find that common ground. Sometimes there are situations where just by talking it through, you realize, and the folks that you're trying to sort of sway, that there is common ground. There's a different way of approaching things, and let's all find that way. So you have to be diligent about it, patient, etc. I will say most of the, some of the things that people criticize us for or get frustrated with is that we don't sort of fight every neighborhood fight around Narragansett Bay. Folks want to bring us in because of our reputation to fight local battles that should be fought locally. And so sometimes I think folks might get frustrated that we don't jump into every fight or every issue that they want us to, but we have to stay focused on our priorities. We're driven by a strategic plan. Some of the opposition to what we do comes from things like shoreline access. We have a constitutional right in Rhode Island to get to and enjoy the shore. That bumps up against private property owners sometimes who might not want people on the beach in front of their home, but the beach is for everyone. And so that's where I think some of the most sort of intense disagreements have come in recent years. But again, when I say it's a bay for everybody, it's a bay for everybody. The public owns the bay, the public owns the shoreline. And things are getting very complicated with a changing climate because seas are rising and shorelines are changing rapidly. And what happens when what is the public's, that is the water, is rising up and encroaching on what is private property right now? What happens when the shoreline changes? I mean, big challenging issues that are they're legal, they are social, they are economic.
You're saying you can't fight every fight, right? Everybody gets that. They should get that. Superman's got to worry about Lex Luthor, right? He's not worrying about kittens and trees, right? Mm-hmm. So I get it. This concept of the water rights, it's interesting. I've met some great people just because they walk in front of my house. They're walking their dog. And we have our dog and we meet lovely people. And it's an anathema to me to think that access wouldn't be there or people think it shouldn't be there. That mindset does need to get corrected.
It does.
Over time. That's right. Yes. One of the organizations that you're involved in is the Foundation for West Africa, and you spent a few years in Sierra Leone as part of the Peace Corps. And so maybe you can tell us a little bit about what the radio programs in your foundation are doing and how they support people.
Sure. I was in the Peace Corps in Sierra Leone from 1985 to 87. They went into a very tough civil war a few years after I left, and I had a chance to go back right after the war ended in 2002, and by fate was connected to a group of people who used radio broadcasts to actually literally help end the war. They also used broadcasts to help keep people alive during the war by guiding them away from conflict and towards food and shelter and things like that. I'll try to condense this as best I can, but I kind of knew right away when I was introduced to them that what they were doing was powerful. I took one step, which was to help the community that I had lived in and around for 2 years build what was then the third community radio station in the country. And I got a taste of that, and I kind of got the bug and formed this organization with 2 folks from Rhode Island's West African community. And we have, in 20 plus years, raised money, I think, for 16 or 17 radio stations and a large independent radio network, as it's called, that reaches pretty much all of Sierra Leone's 8 million people. So, yeah, it's a lifeline. As if you went over there, you'd see painted on the side of radio stations, "The voice for the voiceless." So that's what. Yeah, it is cool. And Sierra Leone, by the way, is oddly, Trent, it's how I think the seeds of working at Save the Bay were partly planted there because I was working on a health and sanitation project where we had to site water wells and pit latrines in the same village, but keep them away from each other enough to protect public health.
Absolutely right. What an interesting start.
Yep.
I read a story about influence in the radio stations, what made me think of it. So in Tanzania, there was, I think in a lot of places in Africa, a spousal abuse problem. Mm-hmm. And this one woman, her last name was Kawai, I forget her first name, but she created a radio program that showed this average family that people would listen into. And then they had, over time would have the male lead character committing acts of violence that were taken very poorly on the radio. And what happened was families would listen to this and kind of get the concept that that was poor behavior. And over years, were able to influence the behavior to reduce spousal abuse through radio broadcasts. Something very simple as that.
It is a simple, it's a very powerful medium. And that's what I think that's common in Africa, actually, is that using dramas
Yes.
as a tool for change. And people do respond to it. They recognize the characters that are in those dramas as people that they know. So, it's incredibly powerful still. And those radio stations now are, of course, embracing social media and really expanding their reach. So it's an exciting time over there. And it's also a tough time. So they're needed.
What do you consider the traits of an effective leader?
To me, I mentioned active listening before. It is so important to listen to people carefully, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, and really, the expression read the room. I think it's important to be able to read the room and synthesize everything that's going on and put it into a plan of action in a way that people feel good about it. Even if they don't agree with the outcome or the decision, they understand it and can get behind it. Much of what I do is listening to people and respecting their point of view and working with it and incorporating it into whatever big directional decisions we're making. I also think I do believe in tone setting. So we're all in this for the organization and for the mission in the case of Save the Bay. And everything we do must be done with that as our primary goal. So, but people are wrapped up in their very important individual tasks within the organization. But just always coming in with a reminder about why we're doing this. The other day at our staff meeting, I decided to do a history lesson of Save the Bay, who we are and where we came from and where we all fit into this continuum of this great organization. And it was a joy to see, especially some of the newer, younger staff sort of go like, I had no idea. Wow, this is special. I think they gained an appreciation for it. So I guess broadly, Trent, I do think you set a tone and you listen and you lead accordingly. That's how I see it.
Outstanding response. The act of listening, where you started, that's a hard one for people to do. So, for example, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm trying not at the same time to line up where I want to take us next, because I want to be that deeply involved in what you're describing to me and the details of it. President Clinton, one of his greatest skills I always found was his ability to listen. And he had described it as, I don't think at all about what I want to say next. I've totally immersed myself into what the person is saying, to the point where there were gaps in conversations because he was just waiting to make sure somebody was done.
Yeah, that he has a great skill. That's a great skill to have.
It's a great skill, and it's uniquely hard because so many people and leaders that I know want to tell you. So they're thinking about what they're going to tell you, and they're just missing the details, the important one, the juicy stuff that they could be learning from.
I also think it's important to always be looping back to the people that you work with and asking them, how can I better support you? What do you need from me as the leader of the organization? They need to know that I'm here for them and have their backs.
It sounds a lot like Ed Koch, mayor of New York City, putting out the app, how am I doing?
Yes, I remember that, Koch, yes. But it's important to know that. It's very important.
It's exactly right. You're talking about reading the room. That's taking the temperature. Those are two, what's the blood pressure? Those are the things that a doctor would do to get a checkup. When you come in, say, it's exactly what many times a leader needs to do. Have a checkup with his people, right?
Mm-hmm. I think too, as a leader, I think there's there's sort of a mindset of you have to get the most out of people. To me, it's about getting the best out of people as individuals and as teammates. And when we get their best, we are cooking on all cylinders.
Yes. What a wonderful way to put that, Topher. Thank you. Topher, I have one last question for you. Who is your favorite fictional character?
Well, I think if I can use a storybook character, probably the Lorax.
The Lorax? How do you get to choose the Lorax? Just because of his environmental nature?
Yeah. Just selfless and speaking for the trees. As I said, fish don't vote, right? And so I always liked the Lorax as a character. I will tell you, probably when I was a little kid, I wanted to be Christopher Robin in Winnie the Pooh because I thought Christopher Robin lived a great life in that world.
Outstanding. Topher
Yeah.
Hamblett, this has been wonderful. I'm so glad you took the opportunity to join us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Trent. I enjoyed the conversation a lot.
Wonderful. Resilient leaders face challenging currents, and it's tough navigating. But with one tack or another, we can get there together. Again, if you enjoy this episode, please like, subscribe, forward it to somebody else so they can learn about the great works from Topher Hamblett, Save the Bay. Again, Topher, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Trent.
Friends, be well. We'll see you next time.